The wind tore across Blackstone Ridge like a scream from the earth itself. Rowan Callahan, former Delta Force operative turned border agent, hung limp against the face of a sandstone cliff. Blood trailing down her temple. Her radio crackled once, then died. Her last memory was the crunch of boots behind her and the sting of betrayal. No one was coming, not from the station, not from the world, but from somewhere below. Rising through the canyon's howl came the unmistakable, defiant bark of a dog she once saved from death. Valor had found her. Before we begin this unforgettable story, would you mind sharing where you're from in the comments? And if stories of love, loyalty, and second chances move you, please give this video a like and consider subscribing. The sun was merciless over Blackstone Ridge, where Red Rock Canyon stretched like the ribs of a sleeping beast beneath the cloudless Arizona sky. Wind scoured the cliffs and dry ravines, howling through the crags in sharp, ghost-like whistles. It was the kind of place where sound vanished into heat, and footsteps disappeared into dust. Rowan Callahan, 37, rode alone across the ridge's edge on a tan patrol ATV, her eyes scanning the undulating terrain with quiet focus. Tall and strong-shouldered, Rowan moved like someone born for deserts, confident, calculated, and utterly alone. Her thick auburn hair was braided tightly down her back, tucked beneath a desert patrol cap. A thin scar ran along her jawline, but it was her eyes, steel gray, deeply set, that made most people step carefully around her. They carried the silence of someone who had survived more than she said and remembered more than she wanted to. Once a Delta Force operative, Rowan had led search and rescue missions in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. She'd fought through roadside bombings, ambushes, and betrayal, but no mission had broken her the way returning home did, stateside. She'd found no peace, just noise, bureaucracy, and people who didn't understand why silence mattered. So when the Border Patrol offered her an assignment in the southern reaches of Arizona, she didn't hesitate. Remote duty, no cities, no speeches, just work, the land, and air as dry and raw as memory. Blackstone Ridge was hers for the day, 20 miles of unforgiving cliffs and sun-bleached scrub. Notorious for illegal crossings and cartel movements, but today felt different. She couldn't say why, just a current in her blood, an itch behind her ribs. She pulled the ATV to a stop at a narrowing ledge. The wind shrieked around her as she stepped off. Scanning a stretch of sand at the cliff's lip, something had passed here, too big for coyote, too orderly for deer. Boot prints, maybe 3 sets, fading where the wind had started to reclaim the trail. Her gloved fingers brushed one of the imprints, not recent, but not old either. Rowan straightened, her instincts sharpening like a blade. She reached for her radio to report the possible trail. Then the world turned white. A brutal crack slammed against the base of her skull. Her knees buckled. A flash of heat surged through her head, and the sky tilted sideways. She tasted sand, blood. Someone was behind her, too fast, too quiet. Hands grabbed her arms, forced her face down. A second blow came, dull and final. Darkness dropped like a curtain when Rowan awoke. Her mouth was full of grit, and her arms ached like they were tearing from the sockets. Wind roared in her ears. She opened her eyes, then wished she hadn't. Sky. Only sky. She was hanging, literally, suspended over a chasm, the coarse burn of rope digging into her torso. Her hands were zip-tied behind her back. The knot securing her body was tied to a jagged boulder above the cliff's edge below her. 30 feet down. Sharp rocks gleamed in the desert sun like broken teeth. The rope groaned. Every sway, every gust of wind rubbed it against the stone. If it frayed, if it snapped. She gritted her teeth, trying to twist, to shift her weight, useless. Her shoulders screamed. Her throat was too dry to shout. No one knew where she was, no backup, no GPS, just sun, silence, and her own breathing, shallow and fast, and then a sound broke through the wind, a bark. Rowan's heart surged. One bark, then two, urgent, sharp, getting closer. Her breath hitched. "Valor," she croaked. Somewhere above her. Claws scraped against rock. A low, familiar growl pierced the desert hush. He was coming. Valor was a German shepherd, 6 years old, sable-furred with black saddle markings and intelligent amber eyes that never missed a thing. His left hind leg carried a slight limp from an old injury, a roadside bomb in Kandahar, but it never slowed him when it mattered. Once a decorated K-9, he had been labeled unfit for service, discarded, forgotten, until Rowan found him. They hadn't just bonded, they had recognized each other. Two soldiers no longer welcome in the world they fought for. She gave him a home. He gave her something purer than orders or duty. Trust. And now, he was running. Through rock and wind, back to her. Back to where her story wasn't supposed to end. The night wind rolled low over the Arizona desert, kicking sand through the chain-link fences of the Sierra Crest Border Patrol outpost. The compound was quiet, just the steady thrum of a generator. A porch light flickering near the gear shack, and a sleeping silence that masked the unease buried in its bones. But one soul didn't sleep that night. Valor. The sable-coated German shepherd sat in the narrow shade of the perimeter wall, head tilted toward the distant ridges. His ears twitched. His nose flared. Something was wrong. Not a sound, not a sight, but something deeper, like pressure in the air before a storm. 6 years old, with a scar near his flank and a slight limp in his rear leg. Valor had spent most of his life in service. War had shaped him, but love had restored him. Rowan Callahan had done that. She found him broken, but never treated him like a broken thing. And tonight, without needing a signal, without a command, he felt her slipping away. He stood, no hesitation, no whine, no noise to alert the guards. He backed away from the wall, skirted the edge of the sleeping barracks, and disappeared into the desert like a shadow peeled loose from the earth. Miles of rock and dust lay between him and Blackston Ridge. The moon was low, but his senses burned like searchlights. He caught her scent faintly at first, a worn jacket she had left behind the day before, a boot track near the water trough. Each clue pulled him westward. By dawn, his paws were raw from the stone, but he didn't stop. Not once. Back at the outpost, just after sunrise, Dorian Flint adjusted his glasses and leaned in toward his desk monitor. Confused. He was alone in the data room, a place few agents visited without a reason. The air smelled of stale coffee and ozone from overworked machines. Dorian was 32, long-limbed and sharp-featured, with dark eyes that rarely met yours unless he trusted you, and trust wasn't something he handed out freely. His background wasn't military. He had built systems, cracked codes, and once exposed a citywide parking meter hack in Chicago, then quit because no one thanked him. When the Border Patrol hired him, he hadn't expected desert duty, but he hadn't expected much of anything lately. What caught his eye this morning wasn't the strange heat signature from the southern fields or the error logs from the relay tower. It was a routine patrol assignment, Rowan Callahan's. Her name was listed for Blackstone Ridge. That wasn't strange. What was strange was that the order hadn't come from the central patrol queue. It was entered manually. The metadata showed a timestamp. 5:46 a.m. Just 20 minutes before Rowan left. That was already off. Patrol routes were filed by midnight at the latest. Even stranger was the user tag. Admin, Yume Mawana. A system account. Supervisor Wade Mercer. Dorian muttered aloud, his brow furrowing. Wade was the outpost's senior officer. Efficient, formal, a little too clean. Dorian had never liked the man's eyes, too smooth, like polished concrete, but he kept that opinion to himself. Until now. He tapped further. A version log revealed that the map Rowan used had been modified, subtly. Not obvious unless you checked the path coordinates. The route curved toward a dead radio zone. No tower access, no repeaters. It was like sending someone into fog with no compass. Dorian leaned back, heart beating faster than he liked. It could be nothing. Could be a misclick. A late correction, a clerical delay, or it could be something else. He hesitated, then saved the log under a protected folder, added a timestamp, encrypted it, just in case. Then he opened the dispatch line. "This is Flint," he said, his voice flat but clipped. "I need to confirm Agent Callahan's last check-in. Also, I think there's been an unauthorized change to her patrol route." Valor crested the final bluff just as the sun knifed over the rocks, casting Blackstone Ridge in a harsh red glow. Below, the terrain split into deep ravines and jagged ledges. He paused, scanning. The wind carried her scent, fresh, and something else. Rope, blood, fear. His paws churned dirt as he ran down slope, muscles burning but mind locked on a single target. There, on a cliff edge, swaying, a human form bound and hanging. His Rowan. He barked once, sharp, purposeful. Her head lifted slightly, a weak breath, a word lost in the wind. Valor surged forward. He was not trained for rescue. He was not trained for cliffs or rope. But war had taught him to improvise. He scanned the edge, saw her pack thrown aside by whoever had left her here. He sniffed through the compartments, found what he needed. A blade. He took it in his jaws, stepped carefully to the cliff's edge, and dropped it beside her trembling hands. The infirmary inside Sierra Crest Outpost was spartan and dim, its fluorescent lights flickering slightly overhead. The air reeked faintly of disinfectant and desert dust. Rowan Callahan lay still on the cot. Muscles stiff and scraped raw, ribs aching with every breath. A tight bandage wrapped around her left forearm, and her lips were cracked from sun and dehydration. But her mind, sharp as a filed blade, was already past the pain. She stirred when the door creaked open. Valor padded in first, tail low but eyes alert, his massive form casting a shadow across the floor. Behind him stepped Dorian Flint, still wearing the same gray patrol shirt from the night before. A coffee-stained folder tucked under one arm. His jaw was tight, eyes unreadable behind narrow frames. "You're awake," he said, voice cautious. "Wasn't sure when they said you hit your head that hard." Rowan sat up slowly, ignoring the jolt in her shoulder. "How long?" 18 hours. "You blacked out just as the medevac lifted you." She nodded once, then looked down at Valor, who rested his chin on her knee. Her fingers ran gently through the thick fur behind his ears. "He found me. He did," Dorian said, "and probably saved your life." Rowan's gaze flicked toward the folder under Dorian's arm. "What do you have?" He hesitated, then shut the door behind him. "I didn't want to show this to anyone else yet. Not until I knew what I was looking at." He handed her the folder. Inside were printouts, metadata logs, routing tables, and time-stamped screenshots. Rowan scanned them quickly. her brow tightening. "The patrol order was forged," she said flatly. Dorian nodded. "Came from an admin account that shouldn't exist. I tracked the device ID to one specific terminal." Rowan's voice was ice, whose Dorian met her eyes. "Supervisor Wade Mercer." Silence pressed between them for a long beat. Wade Mercer, her former CO in Delta Force, a man with smooth hands and colder ambition. He had once led her team in Kandahar, had signed off on a mission gone wrong, leaving half the unit dead in a collapsed tunnel. She had filed the report. The inquiry had been buried. The fallout never touched him. She thought she'd escaped him by joining the Border Patrol, apparently. She hadn't. "What else did you find?" she asked, her voice low. Dorian pulled out a flash drive. "Not much. He's good. Most of the logs are scrubbed. But this was in the backup cache. A security override request sent 5 minutes after your patrol launched. It locked out your GPS tracker." "He wanted me to disappear," Rowan said. "No radio, no coordinates. Just one bad step away from a canyon floor." She stood slowly, breathing through the ache. "We need proof, something solid, I agree," Dorian said. "But if we start poking around, he'll know." Rowan's eyes sharpened. "Then we don't poke. We dig quietly." The midday heat settled over Sierra Crest like a heavy curtain. At the far end of the outpost, in a bunker-like communications room lined with old servers and blinking lights, Supervisor Wade Mercer stood alone, mid-50s, silver hair neatly combed back, crisp tan uniform, not a wrinkle out of place. His face was clean-shaven, his demeanor smooth as glass, but his eyes, a shade too pale, held nothing warm. He tapped into the internal system, fingers moving efficiently. A new security alert had triggered. Dorian Flint's user account had accessed restricted logs. Wade's lips curled. He typed in a new command, set watch list, enable silent tracking. Flint, Dorian plus Callahan, Rowan. Then he leaned back, steepling his fingers. This was not the first time a loose end had wriggled free, but it would be the last. That evening, Rowan, Valor, and Dorian gathered in the garage bay, surrounded by idling ATVs and dust-caked tool lockers. The only light came from a flickering overhead bulb and the half-open door, where the orange sun bled across the floor. "I know a place," Rowan said quietly. "A canyon 4 miles south, beyond the mapped patrol zones. Wade used to call it the pit. If he wanted a body never found, that's where he'd stash it." Dorian finished. Rowan nodded. "We search it tomorrow, discreetly." Valor gave a low whine, as if sensing the weight of the plan. "Don't worry, boy," Rowan murmured, ruffling the fur on his head. "You're not going alone this time." Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the sand, as if whispering secrets across the darkening desert. The desert night cloaked Sierra Crest Outpost in a deceptive silence, the kind that made the sand seem still and the shadows long. Inside the outpost, the hum of old fluorescent lights and faint drone of cooling units gave a false sense of security. But Rowan Callahan had learned never to trust quiet. She was seated in the server room with Dorian, Flint, and Valor lying near her feet, when the lights flickered once, then went out. The abrupt silence that followed was louder than any explosion. Then came the sound, a low, distant thump, like something had been severed. The emergency lights kicked in, dim and red, barely illuminating the narrow corridors. What the hell was that? Rowan stood quickly, reaching instinctively for her sidearm. Dorian checked the portable monitor he carried. Power cut, full system blackout. Backups didn't engage, that's deliberate. Valor was already alert, ears high, hackles raised. A faint growl hummed in his throat. Rowan opened the door slowly, peering into the hallway. The rest of the outpost was dark, except for the sliver of red light bleeding from emergency wall strips. The surveillance monitors were black. Communications dead. She turned to Dorian. Someone's coming for the servers. Dorian grabbed his laptop and hard drive. We need to move. There's only one backup of the map data left, and it's on the root server in the comm vault, outside. The soft pad of boots moving on tile echoed too many for a routine patrol. Rowan signaled to Valor, and the three slipped silently through the darkened corridors. They passed the medical wing and rounded a corner toward the vault when they nearly collided with Maria Goss, the station's night operations tech. She was in her mid-30s, short and wiry, with a freckled face that rarely smiled. But her eyes were sharp with calculation. She wore a brown crew sweatshirt and jeans, no tactical gear. But she carried a crowbar in one hand and a radio that sparked static. They hit the main relay, she whispered. No cameras, no comms. Someone's walking through here like they own the place. Rowan nodded. Wade Maria's mouth pressed into a line. I saw him 10 minutes ago, heading for the comm vault. Alone. But I heard voices, at least 3 others with suppressed weapons. Let's stop him, Rowan said. They reached the main vault, an old steel door tucked behind the armory. Inside were 6 network servers, humming faintly even now, powered by their own microbattery. As they crept toward the control panel, 2 men in black tactical gear emerged from the shadows, aiming silenced pistols. Rowan dropped low, rolled to the left, and fired. Valor lunged forward with a snarl like a breaking wave, striking one assailant full in the chest and dragging him down with bone-snapping force. The second attacker fired but missed. Dorian tackled him from the side, knocking the gun loose. While Maria struck the man's hand with her crowbar, he fell, groaning. Unconscious. Clear. Rowan asked. Valor growled once, and that was the only answer needed. The server vault was still untouched, but Wade Mercer stood at its terminal, typing rapidly. His calm demeanor cracked just slightly when he turned and saw them. Well, he said, voice smooth but breathless. You're more persistent than most. Rowan leveled her sidearm. Step away from the console. Wade smirked. This station runs on broken systems and broken people. You really think saving a few log files is going to matter? I think it matters if you die trying to delete them. He pressed one final key. The server blinked. Dorian rushed forward, shoving Wade aside and yanking the power from the console. The backup drive stopped just short of deletion. Got it, he said. We saved the logs. Wade turned to Rowan, something bitter in his expression. You could have stayed buried on that ridge, but I didn't, Rowan said, and now everyone will know what you did. Wade lunged toward her, but Valor moved first, placing his massive frame between them, teeth bared in warning. Wade stopped cold. Maria stepped forward, holding up her working emergency radio, already called it in, backups en route. They'll be thrilled to meet you. As the 3 of them held the line, Rowan finally allowed herself to breathe again. Not because the danger was over, but because the truth was finally secure, and Valor, steady as stone, sat beside her, eyes on the door, watching for whatever storm came next. Morning in the Arizona desert was unlike anywhere else. The sunlight didn't just rise, it poured over the Blackstone Ridge like molten gold, brushing the canyon's jagged edges with a fiery hue. The wind was gentle but dry, carrying the scent of creosote and dust. At the Sierra Crest outpost, peace had finally settled like a warm blanket, at least for now. Rowan Callahan stood alone at the northern gate, dressed in her new patrol uniform. Darker than the standard issue and marked with a special insignia, a stylized canine paw with wings. Her shoulders still bore the stiffness from her fall, a wound stitched not just by sutures, but by survival itself. The scars she carried were no longer hidden, but worn with a kind of quiet reverence. Beside her sat Valor, the 6-year-old German shepherd with deep amber eyes and sable-black fur, now fading slightly around his muzzle. He bore the signs of the recent battle, a shaved patch revealing pink skin beneath a healing gash on his shoulder, a slight limp in his rear left leg, but he was alert, proud, and somehow even more formidable now. A small crowd had gathered outside the briefing hall. Captain Blythe Marston, newly appointed head of regional operations, stepped forward to speak. He was a towering man in his late 50s, square-jawed with iron-gray hair cropped military short. His voice carried the weight of command, but his eyes, pale blue and calculating, held a quiet warmth when they landed on Rowan. "Rowan Callahan," he said, "you've not only uncovered a traitor within our ranks, but you've proven that trust, loyalty, and instinct are more than just words in a handbook." He turned to Valor. "And this 4-legged officer risked everything to bring one of our own home. For that, we do more than give thanks." With a ceremonial nod, Blythe handed Rowan a bronze insignia shaped like a shield, its center carved with the silhouette of a dog standing on a ridge, wind in its fur. "Valor is hereby named Sentinel of the Dunes," he declared. "And effective immediately, the Echo K9 Recon Unit is formed under your leadership." A low ripple of applause rolled through the gathered personnel. Maria Goss stood in the back, arms crossed, a rare grin cracking her otherwise impassive face. Dorian Flint was there too, in a buttoned-up forest green shirt for once, holding a portable drone under one arm and already mapping out AI-assisted canine terrain training in his mind. As the crowd dispersed, Rowan kneeled beside Valor, clipped off his standard tactical collar, and replaced it with one stitched in soft leather and brass, handcrafted by a Navajo artisan from the border town of Lukachikai, gifted to her by a local elder after hearing their story. "Free to run," she whispered. The gate slid open. Valor stepped forward, sniffed the wind, and walked out into the sand. He didn't look back until he reached the edge of the first dune, where he paused, turned, and let out one soft bark before trotting into the wild. For days after, Rowan watched the horizon every morning. The nights were quiet. The outpost returned to protocol and rebuilding. Wade Mercer had been transferred under heavy guard to a federal holding center, where his charges included not only attempted murder but tampering with military infrastructure. His influence, once shadowy and untouchable, had been shattered, but danger in the desert didn't ask permission. It came uninvited on the 6th day. A storm moved in, a strange one. Not in the form of rain, but a ghostly fog that crept over the dunes in long fingers, wrapping the ridge in silence. Equipment at the outpost started to behave oddly. Communications flickered. One motion sensor tripped, then went offline. Then another, and another, inside the command tent. Rowan reviewed the strange sequence with Captain Marston, who now trusted her instincts like gospel. Could be a dust inversion. He offered. Rowan shook her head. "No, something's testing our perimeter. Someone." It was then that Maria, scanning the outer thermal feeds, froze. "We've got movement. East quadrant. 4 bodies. Unmarked gear. Low profile. They're not locals." "Alert Echo Team," Rowan said, but paused when another dot appeared on the map, moving fast, ahead of the others. A canine shape, singular, purposeful. It was Valor. He had returned, and he was chasing something. The feed jittered, then cleared. Valor was not alone, sometimes, when we are hanging by a thread, lost in the vastness of fear and betrayal. Help arrives not in thunder, but in the quiet sound of paws on gravel or the fierce bark of loyalty. Rowan was left to die on a cliffside, yet a dog she once saved became the miracle that saved her. It wasn't just instinct or training, it was grace. A grace that echoes the unseen hands of God working through the purest of creatures. Valor was more than a canine, he was a guardian sent in fur and faith in everyday life. We often overlook the silent protectors, the loyal friends, the second chances given not by luck, but by divine timing. Maybe your Valor hasn't arrived yet, or maybe he's already sitting beside you, waiting for you to believe again. When all seems lost, remember, the desert may howl, but miracles ride in on the wind. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring true stories. And if you believe that God still works in mysterious ways, type Amen below. May His grace protect you, always.